If you're Jalen Hurts and you see this trade, you're probably not thrilled about it. I think he's smart enough to understand that, what the potential implications of it are in 2023. From the Eagles' perspective, I think it's, they probably view it as, hey, here's a challenge. Jalen, prove us that you can be the guy.
Got a midweek edition of Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. The Mac guys, joined by a fellow member of the Marlton Mafia, as John McMullen just put, a guy the Eagles could use as an upgrade at wide receiver. We get upgraded every time we read him at phillyvoice.com. Jimmy Kempski. How you been, JK?
I'm good. Well, at least the Eagles wouldn't waste any targets on me like they did for Jalen Reagor last year.
Didn't know
in that sense, I would help the offense, maybe.
Yeah. Well, you could seal the edge, Jimmy. You got enough length to get out there and seal the edge. So when we talk about receivers with blocking skills, you're in trouble. But we've heard that plenty of times in Philadelphia.
Right.
So let's start. You heard us there talking about Devontae Parker. It doesn't seem like the Eagles had much interest, and they've had interest in a bunch of receivers this offseason they haven't been able to get. You think it's an issue, or you think they should have made more of a play?
So you look at the receivers they did have interest in. You're looking at Calvin Ridley, of course, Christian Kirk, Robert Woods, and Allen Robinson. In my opinion, all four of those guys are better than Devontae Parker. So in my mind, I think it's actually not the worst thing for them to settle on a guy like Devontae Parker. Like, I think Devontae Parker's okay, and he's certainly better than what the Eagles have. Beyond Devontae Smith, and I mean, even arguably Quez Watkins is a more valuable player to the Eagles than a guy like Devontae Parker. But I don't think they necessarily want to settle on a guy like him. I mean, he had the one really, really good year, particularly the year where he had the game against the Eagles where he absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
I think it was Ronald Darby. He just kept mossing him all game. But that 2019, I think it was. I mean, he had a phenomenal game that day, and he had a really good year that year, and then he got paid, and his production's kind of fallen off since then, and he wasn't really productive prior to that year, so he just kind of has that one outlier a year. And again, he's big, and he's tall, and he's fast, and all that, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't translated to production consistently.
Can you tell me the 1,200-yard season that the former Arizona receiver who's now getting paid what, $80 some odd million has had? If we're talking about those guys are better than him, we're talking about projection, not actually done on the field, right? Christian Kirk, did I miss his 1,200-yard season?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'd have paid Christian Kirk anywhere close to what the Jaguars did. I mean, that's a crazy contract that he got, $18 million, I think it was. There was a report that the Eagles would have paid up to 13 or something like that. Yeah. But I mean, he's at least been a little bit more consistent. Like, he's been in the 700-800 range, 900, somewhere in that ballpark, like every year of his career so far. So I can at least get that you kind of know what you're getting at least. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Christian Kirk is necessarily would have solved all the Eagles' problems at wide receiver either.
Yeah, and Jody, that's the key. I mean, we just talked. Nobody knew who Brandon Brooks was. A good player in Houston, but nobody knew he turned into the best guard in football at times here. You look at Malcolm Jenkins. He's a corner. He turned into safety in New Orleans. Was a good player. Came here, turned into a Pro Bowl player. So that evaluation is part of it. And that's what the Eagles did with Kaiser White, who got introduced. Yes, that's a guy coming off his rookie deal that you hope you evaluate correctly and they can get better. Parker, as you mentioned, Jimmy, he's 29. He's on his second deal. And it's been 7 seasons. That's a pretty good indication of what type of player he was. And right here, it would be the number 2 receiver. I'm not as high on Quez Watkins as other people. But I noticed after the big trade, and well done, you got your latest Eagles only mock draft up there, and you want wide receiver. Are they going to just have to go bite the bullet and go wide receiver again in the draft because they haven't been able to get what they want to get at the position?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the contracts that receivers got in free agency, like Kirk and others. But then also these top tier wide receivers are getting insane money.
Yeah.
Like Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. And then this morning, of course, Stephon Diggs gets paid by the Bills. So if you do trade for a guy, like say DK Metcalf, for example, that guy's going to cost every bit as much as these other guys that just got paid this insane money. So if I'm the Eagles, I just draft one because there's going to be a good one available at 15, whether you're talking about Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave or Treylon Burks or Jameson Williams. There's going to be somebody there that's good, that's worthy of that 15th overall pick. And then maybe you just hope that over the next 3-4 years, this insane, wide receiver market in terms of money calms down a bit. And then that guy doesn't cost you an arm and a leg if he turns out to be good, 3-4 years from now.
Yeah, and doesn't usually go backwards in the NFL unless we're looking at another pandemic. The numbers just continue to go up and up and up and up and up. And aside, then I'll get back to the Eagles. At what point does Cooper Kupp stand up and go, whoa, 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 time out Hollywood? All these guys are getting these new deals, and I just had one of the best wide receiver seasons in the history of the. When is my deal getting redone? When am I getting $30 million per? I can't believe it.
I imagine that'll happen soon. Yeah, I don't know how many years is he in the league now. He's got to be eligible for a new.
Yeah,
right?
It's coming up. This would be he might be. I think the next group is the guys he kind of mentioned: AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, and Debo, and I think he would be right after that.
Those guys got to be fired up seeing all these major contracts being thrown around to wide receivers. But
the Chiefs thought they had a deal with Tyreek Hill, and then all of a sudden Devontae Adams happened, and he was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Right.
Let's revisit this." And then 2 days later, he's in Miami. That's how quickly these things happen.
A deal is not a deal until it's actually done. All right. John mentioned your mock, and you had the Eagles taking a wide receiver, Wilson at number 15.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy, I hope you're right. I'm a big Nakobe Dean fan. I just flat out love the player. But the Eagles did sign Kazir White, and they have the history that they have of not taking a linebacker in the first round since the 70s. So we are swimming upstream a little bit here. Why do you think this year is going to be different?
Well, I'll start by saying that this will be the last one that I do until like the week of the draft. And it was version 5. So I never repeat players in any of these. So by the time like I have a whole new set of players in every single one that I do. So I never repeat anyone because what's the value in that? Like I think part of the
when does the official one come out? The day before the draft? That's the one. Here, I really mean it this time, guys.
Yeah, typically. Yeah, that's the one that I really mean. But so I mean, I think part of the fun of the mock draft, reading them is learning about the players themselves and who might be a fit. So by the time I get to version like 5, they're, some of my more likely prospects that they'll take are already gone. But I do think there is a possibility that they could take a linebacker, whether that's Devin Lloyd or Nakobe Dean or someone else that has like Quay Walker from Georgia is another guy who's kind of like whose boost is kind of whose stock has been sort of rising as we're getting closer to the draft. I don't think it's out of the question that they draft a linebacker. I mean, you look at they signed Kaiser White. I imagine he'll start in 2022. He's only on a 1-year deal, so it's not like he's a long-term option. They have to still see if he can play within their scheme. I think they like TJ Edwards. I don't think anyone thinks TJ Edwards is a three down linebacker, though. So they still have a severe need at that linebacker position. The questions with Nakobe Dean in particular are that he's small. I mean, he's 5'11", and he didn't work out either at the combine or Georgia's pro day. He's still nursing a pectoral strain, I think it is. So there are some questions there. I think the NFL values those testing measurables at the combine and the pro days less than people like me and you and the fans and such, because they have what we don't have, which is GPS data that they get from like actual games where they can see how fast guys are running on the field and stuff like that. So they have access to that and we don't. It'd be nice if we did, but we don't. So they have all the athletic, measurable testings on him that I assume that they need. But he's a guy that's known as like a great leader. sort of like a bulldog. And I mean, that's their name, I guess, but like in the middle of a national championship, star-studded defense. He was sort of the heart and soul of that defense. And, I don't know that I would take him. Like, I would have no problem taking him or Devin Lloyd at that spot. Again, you mentioned the history of the Eagles just not taking a linebacker in this draft. As we've sort of said throughout the whole process, if there's a year where it makes sense for them to do it, it's a year when they have 3 first-round picks. Of course, they only have 2 now, so maybe that lessens the chances a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, but they still have the 2 first-round picks, and it's still obviously a glaring, substantial need.
All right, Jimmy, let's talk about the trade because I want to hear your reaction. First, I want you to put on your Mickey Loomis hat, if you have a Mickey Loomis, and tell me what the hell Mickey Loomis was thinking. And more so, I mean, this is a fleecing by Howie Roseman, as I see it, from a valuation standpoint. Nothing matters until you turn it into players, but just from, if you look at all the trade charts, whether you want to go way back to Jimmy Johnson or the new ones, this is ridiculous. This is the difference in value of what the Eagles got back. But so Mickey Loomis first, what is he thinking? And then second, what are the Eagles? What does it tell you about the Eagles' plan that they did this and they pulled this trade off and they kicked the can down the road a little bit?
Okay, I'll start with the Eagles. I think that I would have done this trade no matter what. Like, no matter what the scenario, like whether I think that this quarterback class stinks and I think highly of the upcoming quarterback class in 2023, it really doesn't matter to me. I'd do this deal anyway. But I think certainly the Eagles do have an eye toward the 2023 quarterback class. And I think that this deal sort of tells you what they think about the quarterback class in 2022. If they really highly valued a quarterback in this class, they'd have kept all 3 first-round picks as ammo to move up if, like, the draft sort of unfolded in a way that gave them the opportunity to grab, like, a Kenny Pickett or a Malik Willis, for example. So that they traded out with one of these picks tells me that they're not interested in any of these quarterbacks this year, and it's going to be Jalen Hurts in 2022. From their perspective, they move up actually from 19 to 18, and then pick 16 goes to the Saints. So just ignoring the part where they move up one spot from 19 to 18, take that out of the equation. Basically what they did was they took the 16th overall pick, a first-round pick, and they exchanged that for a 1, a 2, and a 3. The 2 happens to be a little further down the line in 2024. Yeah. The 1 happens to be in 2023. But that 2023 pick, are the Saints going to be good this year? Yeah. And they play in a division with the Falcons and the Panthers, who are both worse, in my opinion. So they maybe have some wins they could rack up against those teams, but they're still in the division with Tampa, and their out-of-division schedule looks really difficult. Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly who they play, but they have one of the hardest schedules in the NFL. Those 4 games against the Falcons and the Panthers aside. And tell me to put my Mickey Loomis hat on, I don't get it. Like, I could understand where in the past where you still have Drew Brees and you're sort of going for it 1 year at a time. You're going to put all your chips in as long as you still have Drew Brees. Drew Brees is long gone at this point. Your quarterback is Jameis Winston. You just had Sean Payton leave. Dennis Allen is your new head coach now. And theoretically, that hurts you both offensively and defensively. Hey, Sean Payton's gone. So the chances of your offense sustaining the high level of play that they have over the last decade plus goes down. And then with Dennis Allen, I mean, the Saints defense was really good and underrated in my opinion too. And a lot of that had to do with Dennis Allen. But Dennis Allen is now taking on far more responsibility being the head coach. There's a good chance that their defense sort of suffers as a result of that as well. They just lost Teron Armstead, their star left tackle. So I don't know what they're thinking that they have like to make this move to compete in 2022. Maybe they're looking at the landscape of the NFL.
The NFC, I said the NFC looks terrible compared to the AFC. Right. Maybe they see an opportunity to surprise some people.
Could be.
I mean, they lost Marcus Williams as well. They lost, Malcolm Jenkins retired.
Yep.
So much has happened in New Orleans. I can't. And I tried to look at the guys who cover the Saints every day. I'm trying to look for explanations. I can't come up with anything to how we pulled this off. So kudos to how we criticize him. But one thing, just to follow up, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Does it say anything about Jalen Hurts? Does this tell you anything about Jalen Hurts, or are we still in this mode? We don't. This is going to be his season. We're all agreed there. But have they already highlighted, like, okay, this is his season, but this is a bridge quarterback, and we're going to move on? Or am I going too far?
They could be, sure. I mean, they already tried to trade for Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson this offseason, but neither guy wanted to come to Philly. So it was sort of dead in the water before it ever got going. But certainly they were interested in trading for either one of those two guys. Now, you look at those two guys and you're like, okay, well, both of those guys are borderline top 5 type of quarterbacks in the NFL. So maybe that's a little bit different than, looking toward the draft for a guy. But yes, certainly the idea that they're stockpiling for 2023, I think that tells you all you need to know about their view of Jalen Hurts in the long term. So, I mean, I think we all kind of had the same read even before they made that trade, that they could be stockpiling picks or trying to for the future, so that they can trade up for, or just draft a quarterback outright or trade up for one or whatever. I mean, you look at the 2023 quarterback draft class. I don't think it's just Bryce Young and CJ Stroud that have the opportunity to be good players. They give Phil Jerkovic from Boston College. I forget the other names of players that could potentially sort of have rise up in 2023. But I think you have two right off the bat in Chase Young, or not Chase Young.
And I like that
Bryce
you
Young.
put the Bodo on your mock draft. The Bodo accompanying it wasn't any of the mock draft players. It was CJ Stroud.
Well, no, Garrett Wilson was in the picture too.
Well, yeah,
he was with CJ Stroud, but yeah. So, but yes, that was done purposely, of course. But yeah, I think this trade, I think, tells you. Again, I'd have done this trade no matter what in any scenario, but I think it does certainly highlight the idea that they're pushing their chips in for 2023 quarterback.
Agreed. And I said the same thing. Smart minds think alike, Jimmy. Even though I have some reservations about the trade, I'd really like to know who's going to be on the board for the Eagles to take with a pick in 2024. Really? You got to go 2 years down the road to get a pick? Come on. Yeah, I got a pretty good crystal ball. Even I'm not going to fake that one. So there are certain reservations I have on it. I can't figure out what Mickey Loomis is doing. Maybe do you think he was out of the country when Tom Brady decided to unretire? Did he miss that announcement? But I digress. Here's my issue with the Eagles and the deal they made with the Saints.
One real quick thing, Jody. I think that the Tom Brady unretirement now helps the Eagles, whereas it sort of maybe wasn't great news for them a month ago or whatever it was. Because now that means some more Saints losses.
You are correct. Yeah. That little plus in the Eagle column. Here's my biggest issue, and it doesn't compare, because I, like you, doesn't matter. When push comes to shove, I'm doing the deal. How did they help the 2022 Eagles? How does this trade make the 2022 Eagles better? To me, it makes them worse, because you had 3 picks and now you're down to 2. And they continue to say, well, we're dedicated to Jalen and we need to put more weapons around him. Zach Pascal, hello.
Yeah.
It's kind of tough to be able to look in the camera with a straight face and go, oh yeah, we're trying to win this year. They're not. They're trying to get by this year. They're trying to win in the future. How does Jalen Hurts handle something like this? He's standing on the sidelines watching it, going, when exactly do you start adding weapons to give me a better shot in 2022?
Yeah, well, the answer to the first question is it doesn't help them in 2022. Clearly, I mean, they traded one of their first round picks, so that doesn't help them this year. I think it's fine. I think actually the Eagles' understanding of what they are as a team and that they're probably not Super Bowl contenders this year is actually an encouraging thing. That they aren't sort of overvaluing what they are, what they have, or whatever. If you're Jalen Hurts and you see this trade, you're probably not thrilled about it. I think he's smart enough to understand that what the potential implications of it are in 2023. From the Eagles' perspective, I think it's, they probably view it as, hey, here's a challenge. Jalen, prove us that you can be the guy by improving substantially in 2022. And I think that once quarterbacks start looking over their shoulder at picks that are made in the draft, if that can affect them off the field and on the field, then, maybe they don't have the mental fortitude to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think we saw that with, Carson Wentz. a couple years back when they drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round, and that really affected him mentally. So, you know, maybe you sort of find out a little bit more about the quarterback that you have when you have them sort of face this kind of adversity or perceived adversity, as I'll put it. But yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, certainly. I mean, this is a move for the future. It doesn't help them in any way in 2022.
All right, Jimmy. So I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say, because you said something that I believe, and I think most people believe, in that the Eagles are being honest about their evaluation. In a lot of ways, that's the most difficult thing for a sports team to do. You look at the Saints from the Saints' perspective. To me, they look like a bottom 10 team, closer to a bottom 10 than a top 10. And they're not being honest with themselves with this particular trade. But I do talk about it all the time. And I think in some ways the Sixers may have broken Philadelphia. It's always about tomorrow. It's never about today. It's always about tomorrow. It's always about we're not ready to do this. We're not ready to do that. And the Eagles have brought up at times, you know, nobody thought we were ready in 2017. And the NFC is terrible on paper, outside of, you know, Green Bay's obviously still got Aaron Rodgers, but they lose Devontae Adams. Tampa Bay, who knows? Tom Brady's going to be 45 years old.
Right.
Then you have the Super Bowl champions, but they've taken some significant hits, both from a talent perspective and a coaching perspective. Why is it always we're not ready? We're not ready. We're not ready. If you make 3 good draft picks, now it's down to 2, you can get ready real quick in this league.
You know, it's weird because I did say that, like, they're maybe self-aware that they're not Super Bowl contenders in 2022. And yet at the same time, they made some weird signings, like Fletcher Cox at $14 million for 1 year. That doesn't make any sense for the long-term view. Derek Barnett, even for 5.5 or 6.5 or whatever you want to call it million. That doesn't make any sense for the long-term view, in my opinion, either. So, I mean, they are sort of like working both sides of that aisle in some ways. A big theme at the owners' meetings, at least in Jeffrey Lurie's press conference, was that, you know, they're building for the now while also looking ahead toward the future. So I think they're trying to strike the balance between those two. You don't want to make moves that only help you in 2022 with the roster that they have. I'm with you that the NFC is, I mean, it looks terrible. I mean, the AFC looks amazing. Like, there's so many great teams in that conference. It's wild. If you put the Eagles in the AFC,
they're done. Yeah.
What are they?
Then I agree. Then I'd say we're not ready. We're not ready.
They're like the 11th or 12th best team, if that. In the AFC, or excuse me, the NFC, what are they, like 5th or 6th, maybe 7th, somewhere in that ballpark? So, yeah, I mean, like, there's opportunity there to maybe backdoor into the playoffs, almost like they did last year. And I don't know if that's really, I mean, everyone keeps calling them a playoff team, but really, were they last year? I mean, they made the playoffs and then they got what was that score? 31-0 in the third quarter. Yeah, so they weren't ready to compete with anyone of any sort of talented team with a good quarterback last year. They won a lot of games against bad teams and really, really bad quarterbacks to get to 9-8. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're probably about the same as they were last year. I think 2022 is going to look a lot like 2021 in that they have a lot of really bad teams on their schedule. Once again, it's basically the same team. Couple additions here and there. Hassan Reddick, I think, will help. I don't know that Jalen Hurts is going to take a step forward necessarily. Like, I don't think that's a given that he will. I think there's evidence that he could actually take a step back, given the way that a lot of teams sort of figured out what he is as a player toward the end of the year. Keep him in the pocket, make him beat you from the pocket. If he's going to escape one way or the other, make sure he goes left, as you and I have discussed before. He's like Zoolander, can't go left, so make him go that way. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he can overcome teams, you know, game planning specifically for him, like they maybe weren't able to do in the first half of the year last year.
All right, Jimmy, want to follow up on your statement of the Eagles seem to be playing both sides of the aisle here, which is exactly what Jeff Lurie said when you were down in Florida covering the winter meetings, the owners' meetings, that they are going to build for both the future and the present at the same time, which is a lot easier said than done. But that seems to be exactly what they're doing this offseason. is Howie Roseman specifically taking the marching orders from the owner and implementing them, or is Howie Roseman suggesting to the owner, this is what we should be doing, and then Jeff Lurie goes out and makes it the edict of the organization? Who's leading who?
Yeah, who knows? That's as good a question as any, and I don't know the answer. I think certainly those two guys are they feed off each other. Like Howie allows Lurie certain liberties to if he has certain preferences, then Howie's going to execute those. And one of the things that Lurie talked about was after he got through his ridiculous statement of like the three guys that he really wanted the Eagles to get over his entire ownership tenure. The three guys he really, really wanted were Lane Johnson, Russell Wilson, Jordan Mailata, like a Hall of Famer, one of their best picks ever, and then one of the best like late round picks ever. So
only three times.
Those were the three times. Yeah. And then when McManus pushed back on him a little bit, he sort of what about all the misses? And he said, oh yeah, there's reports that JJ Arcega-Whiteside that I wanted him badly. I didn't want him badly. They asked me to break the tie. First of all, it wasn't even a tie. Like the reporting that Jeff McLean did on that story was that it was basically Doug wanted JJ and Howie and Joe Douglas were in one of Paris Campbell. Either way, both guys busted, so it didn't even matter who they got. It was a bad evaluation anyway, instead of DK Metcalf or Terry McLaurin or whoever you want to name that they should have taken instead. But it's so funny that this JJ Arcega-Whiteside story has this much legs at this point. It just won't go away. But he specifically brought that up, saying that he didn't break the tie. He said, nah, you guys just take whoever you want. Meanwhile, on the other hand, he's saying, well, we analyze these prospects from every angle you could possibly imagine. We analyze these guys from things you wouldn't even think about. And then when they're on the clock in the second round, they go to Jeffrey and they're like, we can go either way. What do you think, Jeff? And he's like, take whoever you want.
Yeah.
So
well, you know what, Jimmy? I do think Jeffrey, he always tries, and you know this, he always tries to frame himself as this inquisitive, happy-go-lucky. It's just he's trying to, oversee CEO, and he just wants to see strategy. But I think he truly doesn't understand, as the owner of the team, if he says, like Doug, the best example, why are you not running the football in Green Bay? You win the game. And Doug's like, what the hell is this guy doing? Why is he complaining? He's the owner. So it kind of carries more weight.
Sure.
When you say, and he doesn't seem to get that. I don't know if that's real or he just doesn't, but he doesn't seem to understand his opinion carries more weight than others. Is that fair?
I mean, I work for the Norcross family, and they totally leave me alone. They let me write whatever I want to write. There's no direction, or so. I'm not like saying anything like that. But if they suggested something, they suggested that I write something, I'm going to do it because they're the owners of the company, and I better just do whatever they want me to do. So I think you can apply sort of that the Eagles situation with Lurie sort of giving helpful suggestions, and you better do it to their everyday lives and their job situations as well.
All right, Jimmy, one more fallout from the big trade with the Saints, potential fallout, I should say, because it hasn't happened yet. According to Jimmy Kempski, the Eagles might be taking a wide receiver and a linebacker with their 2 first-round picks.
Now, he explained his thought process.
Right, he's changing it every single time, but I'm just focusing on the one that's this week to make my point.
Yeah.
You didn't have him taking a defensive end.
Right. So
they re-signed Derek Barnett. As of right now, he's going to be in that mix for defensive end rotational snaps and the like. John has faith it's going to be less snaps than I do. I fear it's going to be just slightly less snaps than this past year when, for me, he wasn't good enough. If they don't take a defense, are they going to just have one drop in their lap in the second round who plays like a first rounder? Are they in the market at all for any of the guys like the Ingrams of the world or the Jadeveon Clowneys are still out there or is this group and after the first round draft pick going to be what we're looking at defensive end for the Eagles this offseason?
So I think if they could get a defensive end, they'd love to. I think what happened was with the Derek Barnett signing, part of the impetus for that was sort of obscure here, but the David Ojabo Achilles tear at his pro day, defensive end from Michigan. I think once that happened, the Eagles probably looked at the likelihood that a defensive end was going to fall to them at 15, probably was, less likely. Because you had Ojabo, you have Hutchinson, who's going to go in the top 5. You have Kayvon Thibodeau, who's probably going to go top 10. You have Walker from Georgia, who's going to go top 5. You have George Karlaftis, who may make it to the Eagles or not. He's sort of a polarizing prospect. But there's what was seemingly an abundant group of defensive end that was likely to have one fall to the Eagles at 15. Sort of suddenly became, after that one injury, sort of became not as abundant of a positional group. So if they really are dead set on getting a defensive end early in this draft, they could maybe move up for one. I saw a suggestion of the Eagles maybe trading up with the Jets at pick number 10 as a reasonable enough suggestion where the Eagles could get up to 10, take either a defensive end or, one of these 2 stud corners in Gardner or Stingley. The Jets, have a desperate need for a wide receiver. The Jets can get a wide receiver at 10. They can get a wide receiver at 15. It really doesn't matter. So if they can pick up a couple free picks and get one at 15 at 10 instead of 10, then that makes sense for me, for them to do. So yeah, the Eagles move around all over the place, as we've seen in the past. Last year, they traded back from 6 to 12. And then they traded up in the draft from 12 to 10, and they got Devontae Smith. This year, I think that's another possibility where they trade out completely of the first round with one of their picks. And then as the draft is unfolding, they see a guy that maybe has fallen a little further than he should have, and they move up to 10 or 11, 12, whatever, somewhere in that range. And they get a guy that they have specifically targeted as a good fit for their team and a good player or whatever. So I do think that to answer your question at defensive end, I don't think they've just shut the door on that. And I think they would be aggressive in going up and getting one if the right opportunity was there to do so. But the idea that they can just sit at 15 and get one at this point is a lot less likely.
All right, Jimmy, last one from me. Everybody follow Jimmy on Twitter at Jimmy Kempski, at the Philly Boys, phillyboys.com. This morning, read his Eagles mock draft roundup. He's got his Eagles only mock draft as well, up version 5 of each. Say they stay at 15 and 18. I want positions, we heard your explanation of the mock, your most likely positions. And then you mentioned the Devontae Smith trade, because I think that's a chance here. Yeah. If they're going to target one player to go up 2-3 spots, something of that range, who would that one player be?
Maybe Jermaine Johnson from Florida State. If I can give you a couple more, I'll give you 4. Thibodeau is another one that I think makes sense. And then either of the corners, Gardner or Stingley.
All right. And positions, if they stay put. So 15.
Wide receiver, just because there's so many of them. And there's going to be a player worth taking at 15. And they still have needs there. And then, defensive end, if any of those guys fall, like that's a no-brainer. Go take them, done. But beyond those 2, I would say defensive tackle, maybe.
I was going to say, you got to get the DT, because that's what Johnny Mack is telling.
I think they're going to take the DT. Taking a DT. I think they love Jordan Davis. I think that's a name that they might go up and get. But
guy like him, for as athletic as he is, for what is he, 6'6", 340 something, I think.
Yeah.
He's just the type of human that doesn't exist in nature. So if you can get a guy like that, and there are knocks against him that he might only play 40% of the snaps or something like that. But if he could be dominant in those 40% of the snaps, then he's that kind, like he's just a human specimen that doesn't exist. Go get him, sure.
Yeah, he's actually come down in weight. I think he's down to like 325. He
Okay.
read enough about being 340 and change.
Well, I saw him at the Maxwell Club. He ain't 325, Joe.
He's advertising he is. He might not be. We'll see what happens on draft day. Jimmy, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you very much for coming on with us today. We'll get you on again before the draft actually takes place.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jimmy.
If we can get Jimmy up, we're going to punch him back up again. If we don't, you heard what he said. The only mock that matters is his last one, because he does a mock basically every 2 weeks, and he never repeats a name. So he's got to be reaching and stretching a little bit. That's how you get a linebacker going to the Eagles in the first round with only 2 picks now that they've traded one. His last mock is the most important. So we got him back on when he runs that one out there. We'll continue to mock our lives through Eagles conversation. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Getting right back here on Birds 360.